Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fierce Fabulous Fridays. We are here with Ashley Maydak. She is the brand and creative manager. Is that correct? Yes, I said
Yes.
it. For Domtar Paper. Ashley and I have known each other a very long time. She is a Project Peacock pioneer. Was with me from day one, helping to show the creatives and marketing people at brands and advertising agencies about all the new opportunities there are with print and, of course, paper. And one of the things that a brand manager in general is responsible for is crafting who a business is. And that is done by the colors you choose to represent yourself, the logo, the social media tone, all of that. But it comes from first understanding and crafting the narrative of who you are. And that is not just professionally. It's not just about who is Deborah Korn. That's part of it, but also who is Print Media Center? That has a narrative, that has a life and a personality of its own. Sometimes they get melded, like in my case, but most of the time they do not. A company has a story, and then each individual member of that company has their own story and how it plays a part. Coming out of Corona, if you think about how we are all functioning right now, we're doing research, we're looking into people, we're watching people, we're interacting with people, we're interacting with companies. If you talk to the millennials or the Gen Zers, who everybody better be starting to pay attention to, they are most focused on how companies are treating employees and the world in this time. And that is how they're making decisions about who they're going to shop with, who they're going to purchase from, and things like that moving forward. So crafting a story for your business that's clear has never been more important, because a click is a terrible thing to waste. So that is why I tapped Ashley. Since I've been working with Domtar Paper has always been cool, but you had to know that there was that cool side of it. It was also a very corporate looking paper company, for sure. And over the past probably 7 years, between Vanessa Carr's influence and your influence, it has moved to one of the more creative print customer facing, which means the designers and all those people, providing magazines, providing inspiration, certainly jumping on Project Peacock before anyone else got it. So Ashley has been intricate in recrafting the story from a big corporate entity to an approachable creative brand, which is, and still allowing the brand to keep both sides of it, so it can speak to certain people a certain way and certain people another. And it's certainly, when it comes to sustainability, it's a voice of authority, and now it's becoming a creative voice too. So congratulations on all of that success. And I'm going to basically turn this over to you right now. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity. I wrote down the happy hour next Thursday. I'm excited about attending that. And it seems like there's some other great stuff coming up. I've enjoyed tuning in to these Fierce Fabulous Fridays. The one last week was really fun, the translation one. We have a big presence in Canada, so we do translation all the time, but that was a really, really fun webinar. So I'm excited to be a part of this. All right, can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so again, I'm Ashley Maydak, Brand and Creative Manager at Domtar Paper. So when Deborah asked me to present about crafting a business narrative, her and I on several podcasts have talked, several times about this topic, whether it's about the customer journey or creating a story for your brand journalism. This is something we've talked about a lot. And the reason that we've talked about it a lot is that it's a very important aspect. So it's one of those things that it's hard to sometimes give the time and the energy it deserves, but it's something that's also very important because it can set you apart. And so I'm going to go into why it's important and also some of the steps that I take while I'm doing this to not only to work with the various paper brands that we have at Domtar, but also our Domtar paper brand itself. Okay, so first of all, why create a narrative? What's the opportunity? So, as I said before, like, I think one of the first things we've noticed when this whole COVID-19 situation hit is people started talking differently and brands started talking differently. And it was something that happened pretty much overnight. And pretty much everyone was saying the same thing. And it was mainly because they didn't know what to say. And so they were just like, well, I'll just say what they're saying, and it was basically, thank you to the essential workers, all stuff that's very nice and very important. But it also, it didn't set their brand apart. And if you begin with a business narrative, it's something that, you can figure out how to be sympathetic and how to maintain contact with your customer base and the people that you want to talk to, but still, be your true self and still stand out. And so that's where I'm going to get into the first slide here. Well, actually, before I go into this was something my friend Deborah told me to add. When I say the word brand, I talk about brands a lot. I talk about our big paper brands. Some people, when you say the word brand, they think of it as a logo or the creative elements. When I say the word brand, I'm talking about the different parts that can reflect any sort of business, not just a big, huge, Fortune 500 business, but it could be a freelance graphic designer. It could be a printer. And they're just the different elements, from the logo, but also the brand narrative and the tone and the way you present yourself and the way that you, the values that you emulate, that you share with your customer, all of that is part of your brand. And so I just wanted to emphasize that when I say the word brand, I'm not just talking about a big, huge, massive brand. Any sort of, freelancer, small printing company, small graphic design company can be a brand. Like a brand is taking your company to that next level. And when people start thinking about your business as not a business, but almost in human terms. So one of the things that, when you're creating a business narrative, one of the main reasons you want to do it is to stand out. So if you're following these steps and you do the research steps that I'm going into in the analysis and figuring out what your values are and how those values align with the people that you're trying to reach, it's really going to make your business stand out, and people are going to develop that sort of relationship that they might have with another person. It's also going to build loyalty because, again, people are going to see your business in more of human terms. They're going to connect with what you do beyond just a product or a service that they need. It's going to be something that, they love and they feel loyal to, and they don't want to think about anybody else. It's going to be, not only the services you provide, which are definitely a part of it, but it's the story you tell. And that, stories are very powerful. That's why a lot of the great presenters begin with stories, Fulfill an unmet need. So especially as you're doing this research aspect and you're figuring out, what your customers are into, you might uncover other needs that you can not only talk about in your brand narrative, but maybe you can add it to your arsenal of services or products that you provide. So it's a good way to just check in and figure out, okay, continually, what the people that I'm trying to reach, what are their goals, what are their, check in, make sure nothing's changed. And if something has changed, how can you adapt to meet their needs and maintain that loyalty? So how do I know my business needs a narrative? So in my opinion, this is what I do. So I think every business needs a narrative, but these are sure signs that your business needs a narrative. Outdated promotional strategies. So if your website has changed very little in the past 10 years and the content that's on there is all about, your capabilities, your products and services, and it has nothing to do with what you stand for, what your values are, that's a good sign, you have an outdated promotional strategy and you need to focus on your story because you need that thing that differentiates you and connects you to your audience. And, especially, I'm going to go into this later, but maintenance is a huge part of this. And this has to be an ongoing thing where it's like a relationship. You can't just, make a friend and then never talk to them. It has to be this ongoing thing where there's constant contact coming out because you got to maintain that relationship. And that's an ongoing part of your brand narrative.
Just before you go on,
Yeah.
Forget about 10 months, 10 weeks at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah.
The tone of your website is probably wrong for the current state that we live in and the future state, at least for the end of this year.
Definitely.
And being too excited about things might not be the best tone that you want to take right now, to your point. So I just didn't, when you said 10 years, or 10 months, I just wanted to let everybody know, even 10 days, 10 weeks is good enough to go check everything out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you should, your website, should have some sort of blog or something that, lets people know that you understand your target audience, you understand what's going on. You got to maintain that understanding with your group. It's not something that you can, just do this exercise once and forget about. Lack of differentiation. So if people just, if all your website has is just your capabilities and what you do, people aren't going to see you as any different than the other guy that has the same capabilities, because you're not really talking about anything different, So a lack of differentiation for sure. If your customer, gets your business, the name of your business confused with somebody else's business or something like that, that's a sure sign that you need to build on your brand narrative. Lack of repeat customers. And this is something I hear a lot from printers, because at Domtar, we go to all the big printing shows, things like that. And I get the wonderful opportunity to interact with a lot of people from the industry. And one of the most common questions that I get, because a lot of people know that, we do buy a lot of print, as a paper company, we do a lot of promotions. And even before that, I've always been in a position where I was a print buyer. And so, printers have asked me what, makes somebody a go-to printer? Why do people come back to you? And it's not about price. Of course, people want a fair price, but sometimes you're willing to pay more for other things. But a brand narrative and a company that's a little bit different, and maybe, they're doing things with different values in mind that align to my values personally, or maybe, values, with my company, because let's face it, there's a lot of customers out there these days that are, especially with the current global situation going on, every marketing dollar counts. And so if you're being asked to justify why are you doing this, and you can align, your company values to the values of the company that you're working with, that's just as important as any sort of metric as to why direct mail would work.
I just want to give a quick example of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
It would be like, giving back to the community, or only dealing with sustainable materials, no matter what that might be. Those are two things that might be the tipping point, or help another company meet its brand goals to only work with certain companies who do things like that. So that is why telling these stories is so important.
Definitely. So the first steps to building a narrative. So this is the preliminary planning, and these are the steps that are so important, because this is really where you're going to make the awesome discoveries, but it's also the steps that a lot of people skip, because they have this idea that this stuff is going to take forever. And honestly, it's not something that has to take even a month, or even, maybe tops a couple weeks if you're really being thorough, but it's very worth the investment, because this is really where you're going to make some really amazing discoveries about your business and how people perceive you. So step one is look around and do your research. I would say start with a competitive analysis. If this is something, especially if this is something you haven't done in a while, this is something that should be an ongoing thing, keeping up with your competitors and what sort of capabilities they have, the way they're talking about themselves, what sort of organizations they're involved in. I would also say talk to your customers, ask them the question sort of, how do you see my business? What's the reason you work with me? How do I compare to, and ask them how you compare to maybe another competitor. Who do they consider our direct competitor? Because the people that you consider your direct competitor might not be who they consider your direct competitor. So it's a great way to understand how other people perceive you. And also, if you have one of those relationships where with a former customer that doesn't work with you as much, but there was no falling out and you guys are still in good terms, maybe after, if you're in a situation where, this whole social distancing thing is over, you could stop by and, drop off coffee, or you can just, right now see if they have 5 minutes and just say, hey, I just want to get your ideas on what, you know, and you can present it in a way that doesn't feel too salesy or too pushy, but people really like it when you ask their opinion. And that might be one of the things in and of itself that brings them back. But just asking, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, just before you move on to the next slide, the other reason to look at, other printers' websites, especially the ones in your neighborhood, is to see what they're talking about. And, what I call is find the holes in the wine list. If everybody in the same community is talking about the same thing, that you want to talk about something different, or you want to speak about it in a different way. For example, to Ashley's point before, all the brands are starting off all their marketing now with, we understand, we are together, and then some people go further than that, and some people just stay on that messaging. But if everybody's saying that, it kind of loses its meaning, to your point before. So find a different way to communicate the same information, so I don't see those words and think, oh, they're just like everybody else.
Right. Yeah. So analysis, and this is where you take all of that research you did and you look at it holistically and see if you can find commonalities, areas of focus. And if there's someone on your team that, isn't really a part of the marketing function, this might be a good time to bring them in, or bringing somebody in that you trust from outside of your company to look at it through a third person perspective. Because sometimes, the people that are really close to stuff, like me, I always do this. I always bring in somebody that I trust, whose opinion I trust at Domtar, because you have a tendency to see what you want to see sometimes, and look through things through rose-colored glasses. So I always bring in someone whose opinion I trust, just to make sure I'm not missing anything important just because I have my goal that I want to get to, So this analysis is a really important part. And this is also where, you can look at things and look at commonalities and be like, oh, maybe we should offer this service. Maybe we should talk about this more. I didn't realize this was so important to our customer base. So this is a really fun step. And again, neither one of these steps are something that has to take months. Like max, I'm thinking a couple weeks. It's not something that has to go on forever, but it's very important.
Also, as you're, bringing, I couldn't agree more that you should bring in people not in the printing industry to look at your materials. And especially with the website, what I like to do is ask people, tell me what this company does.
Yeah.
And if they can't figure it out, and it's happened a lot, I've gone to printers, I'm like, I think they're printers, I'm not really sure what's going on here. Especially with the software companies, I can never figure out what they're doing on that homepage. So if you are trying to attract non-technical people in some cases, or people who are not just looking for print, but are looking for more, you might want to just really, have somebody else look at it and summarize for you what they think your specialty is, what they think, you can excel at, and how they think you help people. And if it doesn't match, you've got a narrative problem.
Yeah, totally. And I would also bring somebody in and say, what does this company stand for? Because you might think that you're doing that well, but everybody else might not see it, or maybe the way that you're doing it doesn't resonate with people anymore.
That is a fantastic branding point.
Yeah. And it also attracts, if you're trying to attract people, the next generation, as either customers or employees, that's something that's very, very important to them, is the values and what the company stands for. So you got to make sure that's clear. So choose your target markets. And this is something where, especially with any sort of small business, people get a little scared because, I'm asking you to identify who you're talking to in your marketing. And that's not the same thing necessarily as identifying who are the only people you're going to do business with. You want to pick just a few target markets, because those are the people that you're speaking to in your narrative and in your marketing. You need to know their language, make sure that you know their vernacular, what they're into, what they're concerned about, what their goals are. And, there's a lot of I guess it has this ripple effect where you'll end up appealing to other people that are associated with that target market, even though you're not speaking to them directly. And an example that I use a lot is Nike. Nike in their marketing, they talk to athletes. but athletes are not the only people that buy Nike shoes and wear Nike clothes. You know, like it could be anybody. It's anybody, even people that don't even exercise wear Nike, you know, but yeah, and I love Nike, but you know, I love what they stand for. I love all that great stuff. So it's not just because you're choosing your target market, that doesn't mean that you're really skinnying who you're going to work with and you're lessening the opportunity. And anyway, you know, you could be making the opportunity more impactful, and you probably will be. So creating a narrative, once you've done your foundational research, this is how you get started with the fun stuff and building, you know, the tone and actually the whole story and what you're all about. So know your why, and this is super important. People need to know why you're in business, and I'm going to send out an email after this, or whenever I get the information for everyone that's attended or signed up, and it's going to have several links in it. And one of the links in it is going to be this TED Talk from this author named Simon Sinek. And if you're looking for someone to follow right now on Twitter, he's a great person to follow because he's very optimistic, and so I think we all need a little bit of that right now. But he has this wonderful TED Talk, and it's 15 minutes long. And again, I'll send you the link. And it's called Knowing Your Why. And he talks about how a lot of businesses, they start with what and then how, and then they may or may not get to why. So they go from the outside in. And this area over to the right is what he calls the golden circle. But what he's saying is that businesses that really have a brand narrative, and he doesn't call it that, but that really are good at articulating their purpose and standing out, they start with their why. And the example that he gives is Apple Computers, which is, you know, an example we all know well, right? So he says if they were any other computer company, they would start with their what and say, we make great computers. And the how would be, we make them beautiful and easy to use, you know, and the why would be like, want to buy one, something like that. But the way Apple does it is they start with their why, and they say, you know, we believe in challenging the status quo. And the how is, we challenge the status quo by making things that are easy to use and beautifully designed. And the what is, we make great computers, you know, and you can see how that could be a lot more impactful than just starting with the what. And I know what some of you guys are thinking, and some of you guys even after that aren't even on this live webinar and might be listening to this later, you're thinking, well, of course Apple can do this. They're a big company. You know, what about the small local business? And you can do this with a small local business too. Like if I take a printer as an example, I would say most printers start with the what of, we print high quality pieces that, you know, and we offer great service. And we do this how, and they list their capabilities. And the why would be like, you know, call us. But, you know, what if you were a printer that started this way? And there's a lot of printers out there that do this, that started with their why of, your business deserves to be messaged in a way that stands out. And the how could be, it needs to stand out in a way that's impactful, that's tactile, and that people devote their attention to. And the what is, we print beautifully designed documents or beautifully designed printed pieces and offer fantastic service to make your business stand out. You know, you can see how that's much more differentiated and much more impactful. And that is honestly going to appeal more to someone that needs those sort of services. And it might even influence, you know, the kind of people that you actually want to work with. So again, you know, I'm going to be sending out the link to this. I highly recommend everyone watch it. It's only 15 minutes, but he's a wonderful author. Love his stuff. So tell your story. So when I say this whole document is about telling the business's story, but this is where you bring in the human element and you bring in the you part of your story, because a lot of people assume that, you know, their customers don't want to hear about them. And they, you know, maybe in the case of a printer, they don't care about print, you know, but that's not really true. People want to know, they want to know more that, you know, you've been in business for 15 years, or you've been in business for like, you know, 500 years or whatever it is. They want to know you. They want to know what makes you tick. They want to bring in that human element, because all businesses are comprised of people, and they want to know, you know, who is working for this business, and that, you know, the values of those people ladder up to the values of the big business. So you do this by establishing trust, and this is where it's a great opportunity. One way to do this is customer testimonials. You know, get customers to tell the stories of how you have helped them. but also, you know, this is where it's a great way to showcase your expertise. You know, if you have the ability, I mean, and anybody can do this day and age, you know, make, after you've researched your target market, you know, and you figured out they are, you know, they're a little weary of printers because maybe they don't know how to set up their files correctly or something like that, then do a YouTube video about setting up your files correctly. You know, show off your expertise in a way that helps your customers.
If I can just jump in for 1 second and tied into that point, some of the most consistent newsletters that I open from printers are the ones who are sharing stories about their employees too. And so it's not just about, it doesn't just have to be about, here's how to create a correct file. It could be, and here is Linda, and Linda's our pre-press manager, and she's going to show you who it is. So you're combining that with that who we are element and what we do as well.
Yeah, and you know, we've talked about this before too, Deborah. Like if someone, let's say, gets a Skodex machine, you know, and they're a printer. We love Skodex, it's really pretty. But, you know, a lot of times people will promote that in the business as like rattling off, you know, the speed of the press. And that's not what people care about. So do YouTube videos about how cool this thing, you know, look at this, and this took this much time, so it adds this much more onto your timeline, but look how great it is, you know? So if you really establish that trust and educate people and give them those tools, that's really going to help them and their goals. That's very important in telling your story.
I just want to quickly mention that Skodex is a digital press, so it doesn't really add a lot of time to a project.
It would on top of a digital job, though.
Yeah, but not like the same as like sending it out for finishing. I'm just saying,
but I mean, most people, when they want to, like from my end, when I, you know, a lot of times I want a digital job, I need it done like immediately.
Okay, you know? that's a fair thing. Yes, because it is a specialty finishing, but it is still faster than other methods.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so create connection, and a great way to do this, you know, if you have an instance, because at this point, you know, you've really gotten to know the target that you're talking to. If you have an instance where you've uncovered one of their pain points or something that they're, you know, one of their goals, and you've been through something similar, that's a great thing to talk about and create connection with. So, and that's something that, you know, we do regularly on our blog, you know, because we're marketing people. You know, I have a design background, you know, I do regular blogs about that sort of thing. Sometimes it even comes up in our magazine in different points, you know, and just figuring out like the way to get, you know, for a creative, how to get a really, you know, deep, you know, attention getting emboss or something like that. Or, you know, educating people on, you know, if you're really trying to get that great ROI, maybe you need to look into inkjet and figure out, you know, way to personalize your print. So a lot of that stuff, you know, when you're trying to create your story, establishing trust and creating connection are really the two elements to focus on to bring the you into the brand narrative. Keep your audience in mind always. So this is this is always one of the things that you have to keep in your head. You know, it's easy to go out there and see what your competition's doing, but really hold true to the audience that you've identified as your target and keep them in mind with everything you do, and make sure that you're talking to them always and you understand what's going on in their world at the moment. And you do this by painting a picture. So, and this is something we do very often in our magazine with the stories. So you start with the beginning, and this is, you know, where your customer is starting and identifying what sort of goal they're trying to reach or problem they have. And then you tell the story of how you helped your customer. And then you tell the story here of how the problem was resolved. And notice I said how you helped your customer. Your customer is going to be the hero in this story. You are not the hero in this story. You are the guide that gets them there and holds their hand. You know, if this is Star Wars, you're Obi-Wan Kenobi and your customer is Luke Skywalker. And this is something that I see a lot. You know, I used to be a graphic designer. I actively designed for more than 10 years. And this was something I actually did on my website, but it's something that I still see designers do is, you know, they talk about the process and they sound like they did it all themselves. and it's like, really. And then, I used to complain and be like, wow, these people I work with, they never give me, they don't realize that it's a collaboration, and it's like, well, I didn't really set it up. I made it sound like I did it all myself. So it's sort of like, it's a good way to set expectations too, as to, if you really want these great results, it's something that we need to work with together. And that really resonates with people. Because a lot of people put a lot of work into their, what they need help with. It's not like they're just fumbling around in the dark. So it's something that, again, just keep in mind that your customer is the hero, you're the guide, but just telling that story over and over about how you help someone get to where they need to be is a very powerful thing.
It's also a great opportunity to collaborate on cross-promoting each other's businesses
as
well.
Totally.
So
Totally.
it has long-term promotional marketing ability as well to tell these stories in that manner.
Yeah, agreed. And once it's built, work to maintain it. So this is something that's very important. Like after you do this exercise, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to have to do this, once a year or once every 5 years. No, this is something you have to constantly be engaged with your audience, make sure you know what's going on with them, make sure your narrative fits with what's going on with them. And this, recent situation we're in right now is a great example of that. You don't, if you're not working to maintain this, you're going to look tone deaf, and then all the work that you've done is going to be for naught. So maintaining it is very important.
And Ashley, that is such an important point. You haven't been speaking to the people that you work with the whole time, and then when everybody's open, you come back. So you got any work for me? And then you're starting the conversation on that tone, and perhaps you haven't kind of been it all together and shown them either through content you're still sharing now, or in the way that your website has been adapted and messaging has changed and emails and things like that to really have been nurturing this relationship this whole time and proving who you are by being that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, agreed. And, and I think that's some of the struggle that a lot of businesses, because in some cases, everybody's doing the same thing, but in other cases, there's some businesses out there that are a little scared to promote right now. But it's, if you're not doing that, then you're going to, you're not going to have that evolution of, constantly communicating and being there together. So it's something you constantly have to work to maintain. So here's a few important details to keep in mind as you're doing this. Be relevant. And so it should be your job to stay on top of who you're talking to and, everything they have going on. If there's specific customers in your area as a small business, you definitely want to stay on top of what they're doing specifically, how their business is doing, and just make sure, you're offering ideas to help, when appropriate. But, just really, you got to be relevant and stay on top of what's going on. You can't come out there and sound like you have no idea what people are going through, because that's going to really just tank all the work you've done here. And that would be a real big shame, honestly. Be authentic. And this is something that I see a lot. And honestly, when you're working in brand and in creative, or even owning a business, it's tempting when you see a competitor have successes when they're doing something you're not doing, and you just kind of want to follow and do what they do. But in some cases, I think you should always stay on top of what your competitor's doing, and there might be things you can learn from what they're doing, but you need to be true to your narrative, who you are and what values you have. And people can spot a phony, especially the next generation of people. So, again, this is, if you're not authentic and you lose sight of what's going on, this is something that can, lessen your credibility with your target market. So it's something you always have to be very mindful of. Help, don't sell. So selling is not bad. There's a time and place for it. It just doesn't belong in your business narrative. Deborah and we did a podcast a few months back on the customer journey. That's also going to be in the link of resources that I'm sending out once I get everyone's contact information, just as a follow-up. And, there gets a point in the customer journey where you want to know the capabilities because you're ready to work with this company and you want to know that stuff, but it's not in the introduction. I think of it as, those of us with significant others, probably on the first date, within the first 10 minutes, we weren't talking about how many kids we were going to have and that we wanted to get married and all that stuff and what we wanted our weddings to look like, you know? And, you know, starting off with that heavy sales pitch these days, it's just not what people want of any generation. And it's just, you know, people want to build a relationship and they want to take time to get to know you and make sure your values align and make sure that what you're providing is really what they need. So, you know, take that time to help people and don't sell them, and you'll end up with a better relationship in the long run.
I just want to add one more point here, that it's also about communicating your stability.
Yeah.
As far as, are you in a position where if they're doing business with you today, they're still going to be doing business with you in 3 months, 4 months, a year from now? That might be how people are making choices. I don't want to, you know, print here and then I, you know, have to move stuff around. So if you are in a position to tell that story about your stability, about how you've, you know, made it so that you've made it through the pandemic, you've pandemic proof your business now by adding new processes and tools or whatever it might be, that is so important to clearly communicate and honestly market on moving forward. If we go down again, my business doesn't go down and you don't go down, is going to be a very important message to hammer home appropriately moving forward.
Agreed, Deborah. That's a really good point, because I can say on the print buyer side that we invest a lot in this relationship too, you know, and starting over is very painful on the customer side too, because you build all this time, you know, creating this relationship, but letting them know what you expect, letting them know, you know, what your goals are. I mean, and this is how I work with printers anyway. So when you have to start all over with a printer or an agency, you know, it's a very painful thing. So communicating that, you know, being in business with the long term is very important.
Even just, I mean, a project like a catalog or a magazine
Yeah.
that takes several months, as opposed to a one and done postcard. I'm not going to be concerned about a one and done postcard. I am going to be concerned about putting a project that's going to be ongoing or need to be delivered in cycles and many different deliveries for maybe the next 2 years. I'm not going to want to put that work anywhere unless I'm fully confident that that company is not going anywhere, to the best of anybody's abilities that they can communicate honestly and authentically, to your point, at the moment.
Think about your mix. So it's important as you're sharing your brand narrative that people are very multifaceted and they need different sorts of help at different times. And they're looking for, again, going back to the customer journey podcast that we did, depending on where they're at with certain projects, they need different information and they need different, you know, they need to know different information about you and what your experience is and what your expertise is. So think about your mix, think about the way you're communicating, and make sure that you're hitting all of those different points in your customer, you know, decision-making process and journey. You know, make sure that you're providing different mediums for different audiences, that, you know, you are hitting people with social for those quick tidbits, but you also have your videos for people that want to learn a little bit more. And there's also, you know, the customer testimonials. So make sure that you're thinking about your mix. And this is something at Domtar that we've devoted a lot of time to. We have our paper.domtar.com website. We also have our magazine that goes into a deeper read than what we have on our blogs, you know, and of course we have our printed promotions, so which are more for people that are already using our products, and also our swatch books, you know, that are people further along in the customer journey. So think about your mix in that way. Different people at different points, you know, people that are just becoming aware of your business need different things than people that are regular customers. So think about your mix and what you can provide for people at different points and where they're at with different projects. So here's some great examples that I wanted to share with you guys. And I'm going to provide links for these because I didn't want to, you know, distract anyone or, you know, risk the, you know, technology not working well with videos, to be honest. But this is a great video for GoPro. It's their commercial. And I think maybe, you know, for a couple seconds, there's an instance where you can actually see the GoPro attached to the head of a surfer that's underwater. But for the most part, it's just scenes of, you know, people that use GoPro, the kind of things that you would see, and people climbing mountains, people in helicopters, people, you know, skateboarding, and, you know, their whole brand narrative is they help people share their lives. That's their why. And it's something that is really evident in this video and in their marketing. And if there were any other camera company, you know, this video would probably just be a picture of the camera. Look how great it works. Look, it can go underwater, you know? But since they started with their why, you can really see that, you know, it's very much differentiated them. I mean, there's other products just like GoPro in the market. Nobody knows the name of them. You know, it's really something that they've really done well, and they did right, and they did quickly. With purpose. So these are some Domtar promotions. I figure, you know, I can't be telling you guys what to do without showing examples of how we've done it ourselves. So the piece over here to the right that has with purpose, this is our latest Cougar paper promotion. And instead of, you know, just saying, hey, we got paper, we got it in different sizes and weights, we got, you know, all kinds of paper in the Cougar paper line. We talk about how, you know, because of the values Cougar is built with, it is really going to help brands with purpose share their purpose with others in a way that's tactile and is really going to help them stand out. And of course, you know, by example, with all these printed pieces, we show off that we have a broad line. You know, we give an example of it without stating that, without it feeling like a hard sell and coming in as salespeople. And this is available. You can request this at paper.domtar.com. And the one over here to the left, this one is actually out of print, but it's something that our sales managers, whenever they find one, you know, a couple of them at a merchant warehouse or something, it's like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. This one was specific for higher ed. Called Make Your Mark on Cougar, the Educator. And it lists, you know, there's a lot of great content in there. It talks about how the ways higher ed uses print and paper in their marketing, and also gives them, you know, ideas on how to use it in their marketing. We have some great examples in there. We have a view book. We have, you know, a acceptance letter. We have, you know, a direct mail piece that, you know, is printed digitally that shows people how great, you know, digital can print, but also gives variable data examples. So, you know, this one is one of our biggest hits as far as it goes. And it was to a very specific, you know, niche of people, but it really hit home with a lot of them. And it's something that actually we've seen instances of colleges and universities taking this and doing the exact same thing for the packets they send to people, which of course, you know, in marketing is the, you know, holy grail of like, you know, showing that this works kind of thing. Fulfilling an unmet need. And so this comes from our friend, Jamie McLean. You might know him as Jamie the Printer from the Printerverse. This is something that I couldn't wait to share with everyone, because I thought it was a fantastic example of, you know, putting the you in your story, in your brand. So, you know, they, adapted very quickly and created a landing page for all the things that as business opens up might need as far as printing needs go. So it's showing that they've done their research. They know, you know, what their target might need, and they've created this easy way for people to get to these things and order them. But also the way Jamie posts about it is, you know, it's very helpful, and it's something that you can tell, you know, they know what people need, and they're trying to be helpful. And it's very different than what you hear from other, you know, printers out there, you know. And so it was just a really great example of just showing, putting the you in your branding and showing, you know, that you understand your customer and what they're going through. So this is another video, and I think this is a fantastic example of having a brand narrative and using it to, you know, in a sticky situation like the COVID-19 crisis. Guinness maintained they talk about their heritage, they thank the essential workers, they do all this wonderful stuff in this video, but it comes across as very different than the way everyone else did, because they used their brand narrative to do it. And it's a fantastic video, and they just did a wonderful job. It's one of my favorite examples of responding to this in a way that's different, but still comes across as sympathetic, but also a little funny. So it stands out. And again, this video will be included in the links that I send out as well after I get everyone's information. But I highly suggest you watch it. It's only maybe 2 minutes long, but they did a fantastic job. And so, another instance, Mitchell Press, Scott Gray, he's one of our Canadian friends. They do a lot of advocacy work. They do a lot of, they're very involved with their community, always have been. And so, of course, it made sense with their brand narrative to still post about ways they're helping their community. And for this, since it's part of their brand narrative to always do it, it's not just, hey, because this crisis is going on, we're going to start helping people. Like, it feels very authentic, and it's like, okay, they're just still doing what they do, and it's a wonderful example of how, if you're showcasing your values through your brand narrative, it can carry you through any sort of sticky situation and allow you to stay in touch with your customers, even if you're not, specifically what most people would consider marketing. And so what can my business gain from a narrative? So this is in conclusion. So attract new and repeat customers. You're going to stand out, and you're going to differentiate yourself by showing that you know who your customer is and what they need. So this is going to keep people coming back to you and building that loyalty, and it's going to get new people to want to try you, even if they have a printer or a designer that they're already happy with, just because, it piques their curiosity that here's somebody coming about this differently, and they're coming about it with different values. Attract top talent. So the best and the brightest people want to work with the best and the brightest brands and businesses. And if you look across, the next generation of people, and you look at where those people want to work in, the different advertising or design agencies or the different print shops, it's always those businesses that have differentiated themselves in some way. And again, the next generation of people, they love working for a business that has a purpose. So again, this is a very important part of the brand narrative. Amplify your thought leadership. And this also, it gives you the opportunity to do this, but also it kind of helps going back to sharing your story and, creating that story and sharing your expertise and creating that connection. It just, the more you do this and the more that you grow through this, you're going to get more opportunities to do all the stuff you need to be doing anyway. So in a way, it sort of works for itself. And, build brand awareness, make people aware of who your business is and what you do. And, and all this is part of standing out. Businesses that stand out do have more awareness than those who don't. And more people want to work with them just because they are different and they're coming about things differently. And because they're doing that and people give them more awareness, automatically people have in their mind that, what they do is better. And so that's it from me, unless there's any questions out there. This was a really fun topic. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed, talking about it.
Thank you so much, Ashley. A lot of comments when you mentioned the first gentleman with the TED Talk. Everybody seems to love that guy.
He's great.
So maybe you can stop sharing your screen as long as everyone has.
Sure.
I actually sent paper.domtar.com into the chat room. If anyone wants to click on there, the magazine is free for everybody. And you could also sign up for the paper promotions, I'm assuming there as well. Question from Fatima. She wants to know what paper attracts the most attention.
I think it really depends on what you're trying to say. And something that we talk about a lot in our promotions is, you need to, if you're working with a designer that, really knows their stuff and, really knows how to work with print, they know that it depends on the message you're trying to send, and the paper amplifies that message. We make uncoated paper, but in some instances, like a bright white shade that really makes colors pop might make more sense. Or maybe if you're talking about something nostalgic, you might choose a natural shade. So it really depends on what you're trying to say, but it should be considered as part of the design, because it does either it could either add or detract from the design. And that's why you really need to work with your printer and work with your paper merchant in some cases, or reach out to the different paper mills and figure out which one is right for you, and just stay well versed with all the options out there, just so you have a good collection of go-to papers as different needs come up.
Just to flip that around in a different way, what is the most popular paper that Domtar works with?
You know, Domtar is a very big company, and it really depends on what the usage is, honestly. You know, I mean, we make paper for transactional statements. We make paper for
I totally
marketing,
get it. Yeah,
you
it's not
know.
fair. Yeah, you cannot. Right. Well,
So
when it
for
comes
us,
to
it's like,
transactional, you can't because yeah, you can't mess with that stuff.
right.
Oh, so everybody, I mean, is pretty much just commenting, because I'm sure you can see that they really enjoyed the presentation.
Good.
And I know, as Ashley mentioned, we will send out links to everybody with the videos and the podcasts and the information about how to, sign up for Domtar's magazine and to perhaps sign up for some paper promotions. They have an amazing gallery of inspiration. I mean, there's a reason why I hang out with the Domtarians, as I call them. They're a very creative bunch, and they really want to just help, the designers do the best that they can, and the printers to do the best that they can. So that's my plug for you guys. And it was just an amazing presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next week, we have Trish Wachowski, Creativity in Crisis. And as Kelly Malazzi mentioned, next Thursday at 4:00 is our first Get Happy Girls Who Print Get Happy Hour. So please, everybody, register for that, sign up and join us. And thank you all so much. Empower long and prosper.